Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Ukraine, Russia, somebody else, I think China show here on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and our guests are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan. Okay, and also we
Here.
have,
Yeah, there I am.
oh, great,
Great. Glad to be here as always.
Jonathan, and we have also Ivan Kucherenko from Kiev, Ukraine. Welcome to the show, Ivan. It's taking
Well,
time, it's
he's having trouble with the transporter beam.
Yeah, but I don't think it's depends on what Ivan does. I think it's
Yeah, really.
Mark who brings him.
Yes, we're going to have a word with Mark.
Okay, fine. So let's assume that Ivan is there. We both saw him, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, we did. Yeah.
He will be sooner or later. He will join us in a way.
I
So
have faith. I
while
have
we're
faith in that. Yes.
while we're waiting for Ivan, I'd like to ask you, Jonathan. Number one, Friday Alaska show. Number two, yesterday's Oval Office, White
Mm-hmm.
House, Washington show. So, what's your impression? If you like theater, I think this.
Theater is an excellent choice of words in this case, Sasha, because now we have this spectacle in front of us. Oh, say, okay, the European nations are lined up in alliance with Trump, apparently, and they are lining up with Zelensky, and they are supposedly setting the stage for Zelensky to meet with Putin first, separately. Now that's going to be a trick, and then supposedly then after that the three of them, Putin, Zelensky, and Trump, will all meet together in a trilateral meeting to further go with the peace process. The great sticking point in all of this, and several commentators have pointed this out, are the security guarantees. Oh, that magic phrase, security guarantees. Where did we hear this before? See, we heard security guarantees before, did we not? We
Yeah,
heard it in 1994.
exactly.
And that's
Budapest Memorandum.
But yeah, the infamous Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine was talked into, or shall we say, coerced verbally or so, by
Sure.
President Clinton and Yeltsin into giving up its nuclear arsenal, its portion of the former Soviet nuclear arsenal, in exchange for quote unquote security guarantees. And what did those security guarantees come to? Nothing. When the Russians illegally annexed Crimea in 2014, what did President Obama do? Nothing. What did and subsequent to that? So when I hear the phrase security guarantees, and suppose we're hoping that the Allies have learned their lesson this time, that if you say security guarantees, you had better back it up with more than just the good faith of the parties involved. You cannot trust. No security guarantee coming from Putin is going to guarantee that he will not reinvade again at some point in the future. His pattern of historical behavior shows that every agreement that he has ever entered into, he has broken at one point or another.
So,
So
why in this case, when it's all well known, why Trump wasted 8 months to talk to the murderer while he's killing Ukrainian children, women, men, just whoever? Why does he do it?
I'm interested in that. I don't believe that President Trump yet realizes just how evil the person is in front of him when he is talking to Putin. He somehow believes that Putin can be reasoned with, and I think he is. And in this case, I disagree with him and his advisors that he cannot be truly reasoned with. That I agree with the late Winston Churchill that the only thing the Russians respect is strength, and nothing that they have more. There's nothing they have more contempt for than weakness, particularly military weakness. And in this case, the Ukrainians have displayed great military strength. They have successfully opposed Russia. and they are inflicting massive casualties on them. And Putin is fully wedded to his idea or his fantasy about himself being the restorer of the Russian Empire. He has made his objectives very clear. Are secret. Europe knows what Putin's objectives are beyond just Ukraine. If Ukraine should somehow be convinced to yield that very strong defensive line they have constructed in the Donetsk region, that leaves an open path, if I'm not mistaken, Ivan, an open path beyond that defensive line. There is nothing but flat land between that line and Kiev and the rest of Ukraine. The way is open then. The Ukrainians are occupying very key defensive positions and holding the line successfully against Russia. So right now, Russia is attempting to gain at the diplomatic table what it cannot win on the battlefield. And why? So why?
And Donald Trump let Russia to get it actually from what is going. You mentioned the Budapest Memorandum, Sasha, and I've got. I really wanted to show another video today about Alaska, and I definitely will show it. But I found that one another particularly, and I want to show it right now because it's about security guarantees, security assurances which Ukraine got from the United States. So let's watch this video. Actually, it's pretty short.
Excellent.
And that of Ukrainian parliament, you are removing the threat of nuclear weapons and laying the groundwork for an era of peace with your neighbors. I salute the courage you have shown. America will stand with you to support your independence, your territorial integrity, and your reforms. We are bound together by a dedication to peace and a devotion to freedom.
And that way, and oh, by the way, in an interesting postscript to that video, former President Clinton recently admitted in public, he admitted that he believes he probably was wrong in trying to convincing Ukraine to give up its nuclear weapons.
Clinton who was instrumental in this Budapest tragedy. Right. Not Yeltsin. Yeltsin, as long as he had his 2 liters of vodka, he didn't care about all this nuclear business. He didn't care absolutely. For him, Chechen war was important.
And just to add to what you're saying there, Sasha, now the only relevant comment that Boris Yeltsin ever made regarding nuclear weapons is when he made that speech to the Russian Duma in 1994, which he said the only reason Russia is considered a great power is because its armed forces have nuclear weapons. That tells you more truth than you ever thought you would hear. That is their self-perception. They know that without their nuclear arsenal, they are not a great power. They are not worthy of consideration or respect or even to be feared. And right now, you notice that during this entire war, that Russia has been brandishing its nuclear arsenal, trying to scare the West with a fear of nuclear escalation. And so far, to a certain extent, the West has been intimidated, but to a certain extent. But now it's going to be a real test for this agreement that has been put together to see. Well, first of all, it remains to be seen whether Zelensky will agree to it. Because
what agreement are you talking about, John?
We're talking about the supposed thing where they've been talking about land swaps, they've been talking about other things and security.
Let's be clear. So far, there is no agreement.
Correct. There is no agreement.
Let's not discuss something that doesn't exist.
Right.
Number 2, let's separate the 2 completely independent issues. Number 1, it's a front line. It's a heroic fight of Ukrainian people, Ukrainian army. That's number 1, and that's what matters. Number 2 is a second-rated showman by the name Trump. All the shows in Alaska and Washington, what next one will be, and trilateral meeting and bilateral meeting, a meeting with Putin, meeting without Putin, meeting with some delegation, but stronger than with Medinsky, but something bigger. This is nothing but Trump's show. Has nothing to do with the reality. What important is from, Alaska meeting is nothing. It's garbage from beginning to the end. With all the nice swings, some little deviations, but this is real garbage from beginning to the end. Now, yesterday's meeting, of course, it was competition between European leaders to sing praise to Trump, what a great president he is, what a great visionary is he, how he's fighting for the peace in Ukraine for 8 months, although there are no results, absolutely. So what's important actually from yesterday's meeting is a commitment of Europeans to buy up to $100 billion worth of weapons for Ukraine, and $50 billion will be spent to pursue Ukraine advanced drones technology and experience in a wartime situation, and so on. That's important.
Yes, it is.
All the rest is, again, how in Italian it sounds carpaccio, which is garbage in it. What's the noise? Where it's coming from?
Well, we're going to see if Putin demonstrates that he is not serious about the agreement by continuing his attacks in Ukraine.
Does he continue or not? Ivan, was there any
he continues, and that night actually when they meet, there was a meeting of European leaders, Zelensky and Trump in the Washington, in the White House. There was a massive attack on Ukraine using the strategic bombers, which was not seen for a week before that. They were launching rockets. Luckily, they are not able to launch as much rockets using their strategic bombers as before, after the successful Spiderweb operation. The analytics
and there's nothing to say that that the Ukrainians won't launch another attack.
Confirmed that their attacks using their strategic aviation was decreased by 40%, so they lost their possibility.
Ivan, could you please turn your microphone down when you don't talk? When you talk, okay? Because noise is on your side. Anyway, what I'd like to mention is that actually what's Trump doing for the last 8 months is, it's evil, but not stupid. And I'll tell you why. Because so far, Trump stopped his help to Ukraine. He made Europeans from this point on to pay for all the weapons to Ukraine. Trump doesn't commit to provide peacekeepers or to do anything at all. So all his talks and all his show doesn't cost American taxpayers anything. So the only thing what I'm afraid is that there is, especially with Trump talking to Putin for so many times, Witkoff is flying there, 5 times. I'm afraid only one thing, that there is an agreement between Trump and Putin to continue work on peace, quote unquote, and just Putin will keep attacking Ukraine, keep killing Ukrainian children, women, and men, and Trump will continue talks with Europeans, with non-Europeans, with Ukraine, without Ukraine. Just another several months he will do that. Now, and I'll tell you, it's not all by Trump's design. Let's figure out exactly what's happening. Trump can do 2 things. One, sanctions against Russia, against all the buyers of Russian oil, like China, India, and some other countries, and so on. Okay, now let's talk. Can he really do it? when he started tariffs war against all the world, and when some people were fighting him, even now still, believe it or not, Canada and China are fighting him tooth to tooth, and he cannot make any progress whatsoever. I think that India actually didn't even accept Trump's tariffs, and it's still discussing this with him or so on. They're not in the position of China or Canada, but they are, even if they agreed to something very reluctantly. Actually, the last thing what I heard Modi said was that India is an independent country and will conduct its own policy the way it sees it. So in this case, Trump's powers are quite limited, to say the truth. Another thing is he could provide weapons to Ukraine to change situation on the front line. But can he do it? First of all, he himself will not be able to do it. He wants Europeans pay for it, and this way Ukraine will get arms. Is it possible? Yes, in principle, yes, it's possible. However, how it would work out? Trump wants to set up his own corporation, which all European money will go into that corporation, which then will distribute the orders among U.S. McDonnell Douglas, like many other Europeans, like Raytheon, and so on. Is that realistic? Is that possible? It's less realistic, but still possible. So now, how Europe is going to do? Who's going to pay what? Germany? France? Who exactly is going to pay this $100 billion? Is it European Union? No, European Union doesn't have money. It's the countries which are participating in European. So now there has to be agreement how much UK contributes, how much Germany, how much France, how much Italy. Maybe Italy is not in a position to contribute anything. Who knows? We don't know that. So this another long negotiating process. So
by the way, the alternative to that, to what you're describing, would be for the United States to draw down its own stocks of military weapons directly from its own. No. I know you're exactly, because there's a line that that the Trump administration will not cross in drawing down its own stockpiles.
There is a huge shortage of U.S. depository, and in case that Canada and Mexico will attack the United States, they may lose the war simply because they don't have necessary weapons. So U.S. have to keep these weapons ready for attack from Canada and Mexico. And
so Sasha, that's more than a little bit on the ridiculous side, because
it is exactly.
We have no fear of that any more than remember when in World War II, after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, and Admiral Yamamoto was asked about the possibility of invading the United States, and he replied, "I would never invade the United States. There'd be a rifle beneath every blade of grass."
I have a question then. With the $1 trillion military budget, where are the goods? Are they stealing? Is there corruption in the United States that they're stealing the money? Where are the goods? Where are the weapons? Where are U.S. weapons? Where are they?
The United States has not gone to full war mobilization in many a decade. What the United States currently has in its defense base is they keep all weapons at what's called a sort of a warm bed type policy. They keep a minimal production level in order to keep those weapons.
So what is $1 trillion on? So if they have minimum,
because now you have a number of competing interests in that $1 trillion budget, and competing military interests. Remember when I told you about one of the dominant phrases in Pentagon's military thinking is maintaining full spectrum dominance. Okay, full spectrum dominance, when you break that down and translate it, that does not really set any priorities for military spending within the budget. Full spectrum dominance effectively translates to more of everything is better. And if you try to maintain everything as your priority, well, then nothing is your priority. You are forced to maintain a minimal level of production for every single weapon system that you've got out there in order to keep it from going dormant and having to go through the trouble of reactivating that production line. So you have, as a matter of fact, you have a similar situation. You had a similar situation to that in Nazi Germany during World War II. You had competing armaments companies in there, and they had a whole wide variety. One standard tank for the war, and the closest they came was to their Panzer IV, which is not their Panther tank, not their Tiger tanks, but the Panzer IV. They produced about 5,000 of those during the war, and their problem was they could never. And the same thing happened with their aircraft. They could never settle on a standard aircraft and mass produce that. And even when they finally developed their Me-262 jet fighter, that had to take a back seat to other things because Hitler tried to make that into a fighter bomber and did not convert it to a full. Germany had that problem in World War II. The United States now has this problem of trying to keep all of its defense factories active without having to shut one down. So they maintain minimal production levels at all levels, and only in certain circumstances when they have enough advance notice can they tell them, oh, you're going to need to produce more of these. So now, the Trump administration is going to have to, in its $1 trillion budget, prioritize the building of new weapon system or the building of additional numbers of weapon systems in order to meet what it believes to be the demand coming from other countries.
Jonathan?
So it's a very complex problem.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's incompetence of Trump and his administration and the complex of Pentagon when they are using $1 trillion budget to keep production on a certain level.
Right. Right. So you have because you have in the Trump administration has not yet developed an overarching national military strategy, a strategic doctrine which sets priorities on what they're going to, a notion of full spectrum dominance, which forces them to spend money on all weapon systems that are proposed. And in which case, if everything becomes your priority, then nothing is your priority.
It's another example of incompetence. You cannot spend $1 trillion just to keep production a little bit here, a little bit there. This is incompetence of the number one issue here.
Incompetence can exist in every government and every age. So that's nothing new.
Yeah. Because
and even the last example, by the way, I would tell you, Sasha, of the United States being fully competent in the way it spent its military, it spent its funds, was during World War II. Because then they recognized that they could not, even though they had a lot of resources, they did not have unlimited resources. They could not match the Axis in total numbers of troops. They had to prioritize. How did they prioritize? They gave first priority to the Navy to maintain sea control. The second priority was air power. Make sure that they had air supremacy over the Axis when they finally got with sea power and air power. Then they could build up their forces in England and other places to conduct invasions.
It's very naturally coming from the doctrine of Professor Dugin, who is calling U.S., England, and other countries who had colonies and through all history, Russia, China, Germany, he calls land people. And in the long run, land people will always prevail over sea people. That's his doctrine. That's what Putin listening.
Okay. So Putin is listening to the people that's saying that basically land power people. He is basically so long as he has the ability to threaten to dominate what Mackinder called the world island,
Yes.
Then that's
Yes, you're absolutely. Actually, he quotes Mackinder quite often, Professor Dugin. Now, what's I have to find the right words for Professor Dugin. I don't want to make some allegations that he is either idiot or he's extremely smart person. He speaks all European languages quite fluently. I was listening to some of his programs, so trust me, he's not a simple case, but
you can have intellectual blind spots.
He's a devious man, that's for sure. However, let me come back to the situation with weapon issues. That now that U.S. doesn't have to increase its military spending because Europeans are making their orders, or soon to prefer if Europeans would buy directly from the producers without that Trump little thing when Trump will make even more money. He already made $4.3 billion during his 7, 8 months of presidency. Does he need still more money? Maybe. Maybe I'm missing something here. But okay, so it will stop this way, which is slow down, which will make it less efficient, which will be another subject to corruption by Trump and others. However, okay, it's better than nothing. So now U.S. for this limited budget of $1 trillion because money keep coming outside of this $1 trillion budget. So they will have enough money to keep minimum production level, as you say, and confirming with the orders that are coming from Ukrainian. But even that is, for example, I'm not sure 100% it will work out. Because, for example, Vice President Vance was against not supplying American weapons, but even selling American weapons to Europeans and therefore to Ukraine. So that will be another cross current that would have to be dealt with. It will take some time. What I can say, in my opinion, Ukraine is being distracted by these Trump shows in Alaska, in Washington, everywhere. It's a distraction. It has nothing in it for Ukraine. It distracts. And at least if Putin would stop bombardment while all those meetings are taking place, that would everybody involved to reach either ceasefire or real peace. But it's not happening. He continued to do what he wants. Keeps attacking on the front lines as well.
Mm-hmm. And so it remains to be seen, even if, let's assume hypothetically that we have some sort of agreement on the surface that is supposedly reached by the three leaders, assuming that the three leaders even get to that point where they are all three of them meeting. The real test of this is going to be, okay, what is the reaction going to be of the European leaders and the United States when, in spite of all of this supposed agreement on security guarantees and supposed to be reaching a ceasefire or a peace, that Putin just keeps on attacking and disregarding everything that the United States and the European leaders are saying and continuing to attack Ukraine. Then by default, it falls back on Ukraine to do something about it. And that is where I contend that, as I've been contending all along, a decisive military action, which has to be of Ukraine's choosing and Ukraine's timing, and they have to keep it secret. They're not going to talk about it or discuss it with any of their allies. They're simply going to do as they have done previously during this war. They will take independent action on their own to try to cripple Russia's ability to continue the war. Now, how that's going to take shape, we can all have our various opinions about where would be the most effective area to attack. I've stated my opinion previously. I believe the true center of gravity is the Crimea. Destroy the Kerch Bridge. Complicate their ability to occupy and use Crimea. But that is my contention. And most military analysts, I would respectfully disagree, simply because these analysts, none of us know completely what the situation is behind the lines and what Ukraine may have concealed up their sleeves.
Yes, Jonathan, I don't understand only one issue. Russians keep advancing on the front lines, and there was some kind of an attack, and they moved up to 18 kilometers into Ukrainian territory. Of course, all that has been liquidated by now. There are no more advance, and they have attacks sometimes. It could be one, maximum two people. They're trying to reach as far as possible, somehow stay there alive, waiting for the other folks to support them and so on. Very few surviving that, but it seems to me Russians don't mind being killed. Their life is so miserable that there's no difference between being alive and being killed. Now, what I don't understand, what my question is, if Ukrainians have HIMARS, Ukrainians have attacking the drones themselves, should I put it, then how Russian could be now? Okay, Russians have advanced and the big advantage in forces, because they outnumber Ukrainian forces, that's for sure. But still, with HIMARS and drones, is that Russian advantage so important, and why Ukrainians can just dismiss it as an advantage at all and just keep HIMARS and drones? That's all.
That's well, you're quite correct, because as a number of people have observed, that the war between Russia and Ukraine is resembling the World War I style trench warfare. And that the defense has the advantage in this war, and the Ukrainians have been able, by not exposing themselves to counterattack, or by not using meat attacks like the Russians used, but instead very cleverly using the terrain and their available defensive weaponry to inflict vastly superior casualties on the attacking Russian forces. By the way, the Russian attitude and Putin's attitude towards all these casualties, I'm reminded of what Joseph Stalin was reported to have said. He once said, "A single death is a tragedy. A million deaths is only a statistic."
Okay, now,
and that reflects his that reflects Putin's attitude perfectly.
Ivan, you probably have yet another video that you would like to see.
About there, so we can watch it right now.
Type red carpet for a war criminal who has been hiding his head in sand for past 3.5 years was definitely not on my summer bucket list. Trump and Putin are shaking hands in Alaska while Russian missiles are still hitting Ukraine. And when asked about killing civilians, Putin smirks and pretends that he didn't hear the question. As a Ukrainian civilian, let me tell you that it is stressful. Even if I know that nothing will change, for past few sleeping and almost shaking, because I have zero hopes in these talks, but they still somehow affect my life. And every single time they get a chance, they mess up Ukrainian future, that we are sorry, working our ass. Russia keeps on killing us. Meanwhile, what actually matters to me is the heroic defense of Pokrovsk line. Over just past 72 hours, the 1st Corps Azov of the National Guard and its units halted the Russian advance in the Pokrovsk sector, cleared Grudzka, Rubizhne, Novovodine, Petrivka, Vesele, and Zoloty Kolodezh, took 13 Russian soldiers prisoners, wounded, and damaged a lot of Russian vehicles. This is what actual quantitative progress looks like. So today, I'm putting my hope in them, not in some bloodthirsty old man drawing lines on a map. And instead of losing my mind and whining, I'm doubling my working hours and I'm tripling the amount of my donation to armed forces of Ukraine and trying to keep my mind clear because otherwise Russian propaganda will work well. So everything is going to be okay as long as we act according to what we believe in. And I believe.
Wow. That was wow. Well, too bad you can't show. Too bad you can't find a way to show that to all the European leaders and to President Trump. And that's a very effective video. And I am very impressed. Well, not only with the young woman's English, which is quite good, but also in her way of articulating her ideas and her thoughts about what the real key for the Ukraine is. Yeah, she embodies that idea that Ukraine has its destiny in its own hands. They cannot, and should not depend upon other nations to rescue them from Russian aggression. And so they have to be able to, as I've been stating all along, be able to choose the proper time to inflict that decisive counterblow that will finally halt Russia's aggression against Ukraine. But I applaud your choice of video there, Ivan. It was an excellent choice, and hope that you find more like this so that we and our Western audiences can be further educated and enlightened as to the true nature of the war in Ukraine.
Yeah, I have my final questions, probably to you, Jonathan. In 8 months, Trump failed to reach, whether it's a ceasefire or peace agreement or whatever. Now, remember that he himself insisted, he was the first one who insisted on ceasefire, 30 days, and then talk about the permanent peace. And both Zelensky and Putin, for different reasons, declined it. So Trump had to work on Zelensky because he doesn't have any levers to work on Putin. Zelensky, different story. So he stopped sending the weapons and he stopped providing electronic information. Okay. So finally, Zelensky agreed to that. Okay. Donald, I'm with you. Yes, let's do 30-day ceasefire. Months later, there is not even a millimeter that Putin would yield to Trump or Ukraine or whoever. So in this situation, it seems to me that if Trump wouldn't be committed, quote unquote, perhaps to a peace in Ukraine, and he would say, well, I have a million other things, worries to take care of, just do whatever you want to do, Ukraine would be in much better situation.
That makes sense. If President Trump were just to say, okay, after all of this, and you've done nothing, you continue to attack, and you continue to be impervious to any idea of having a real peace or stopping all the killing, fine, we're going to have it your way. We're going to let the Ukrainians deal with you. That would be certainly a change of direction for President Trump, but it would be not beyond his capability to change his mind and decide that, okay, this approach didn't work, we're going to try something different. We're going to try something tougher. That remains to be seen. I think it is possible for him to change his mind.
Everything is possible, but to change his mind and say one thing and then 10 minutes later another thing is good in real estate negotiations.
Mm-hmm. It does confuse your adversaries, but it also confuses your allies.
Not in international politics. Mm-hmm. They view it as the clown who says one thing one way, and then 10 minutes later he says it was a ceasefire. He talked to Putin for a minute and a half. Oh, no, there's no more ceasefire. It's going to be permanent peace. So for 8 months, The man is talking about ceasefire. He brings Zelensky to a ceasefire. He brought every European to ceasefire. And after talking to Putin for a few minutes, he says, no, it's wrong. We don't need ceasefire. We need permanent peace. Jonathan, what kind of a joke is that?
It's not a joke. It's a deliberate approach. So I would have to say we will see whether or not this is going to be effective, or whether President Trump will be flexible enough to change his strategy once he recognizes that it is not working.
On a bigger picture, all I see is Trump provides cover to Putin to continue the war without any punishment, whether it's economic punishment or supplying Ukraine with extra weapons to deal with Russians or so on. He provides cover. Putin doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to worry about anything and continue bombardment, daily bombardment of Ukrainian civil population. That's what Trump is doing. And therefore, in my eyes, Trump is not a lesser evil than Putin. Sorry to say. That's my own opinion. The network could be of a different opinion. You can be of a different opinion. Ivan could be of a different opinion. But my opinion is exactly this. And I stand by it.
You're perfectly welcome to stand by it.
Oh, we still have freedom.
Yes, we do still
work.
have. We still have freedom. We still have freedom of expression
Yes.
on this network. You know that.
Okay. So this is why
That's
I'm very happy to
that's perfect. That's perfectly okay. I mean, your opinion, by the way, given your background and given your experiences and given your perceptions, is perfectly understandable. I have devoted my life as an intelligence officer in my career to understanding the perceptions of various other countries. As a matter of fact, the heart of my analytical method for prediction is to be able for the intelligence analyst to be able to understand the perceptions of the various national actors and not assume that those national actors think the same way that you do, or that's called, we call in the intelligence community, call that mirror imaging, projecting your own logic onto that of your opponent. The mistake that the Trump administration, I would argue, that the mistake that they have been making and continue to make to a certain extent is that of mirror imaging. They are projecting their own notions of rationality and logic onto that of the Russians, assuming that the Russians at some level must see the situation the same way that they do. And unfortunately, in this instance, as in many such instances, they are wrong. And so they're going to have to be able to have the flexibility to adjust their thinking and their actions as the situation develops. So that is my opinion, and that is my assessment.
Jonathan, see, I would like to notice that Trump fired 100 people, over 100 people from the Department of Foreign Affairs in Russia or Eastern Europe. If he would have at least one person like Fiona Hill, for example, she would be very helpful in this situation. She would very quickly explain to Trump and his very inept
if he had me in there, it would be a really lively and possibly a very short conversation. But it would be interesting to watch. Anyway,
yeah, you have to though be properly dressed because you will be attacked by.
Oh
judges.
yes, I have my I do have my suit ready. I have my special suit. Yeah, I'm prepared just like Zelensky. I've got a nice suit ready just in case I get called into the White House. And say, oh, hey,
Wait a sec. Yesterday, Zelensky didn't wear a suit. No, it was a black dress.
Yeah.
But
It was a step up from the battle dress uniform, whatever he was wearing before.
maybe just in case he was carrying a tie in his pocket.
Right.
So he would be accused, how dare you are to come without tie? Okay, here's my tie. Okay, now I got it.
You remember General Patton during World War II required the men in his army to wear ties. Yeah, he didn't want them to look like slobs. He expected them to maintain a certain level of dress, which was very strange, but on some level it actually worked. In this case, okay, Yeah, by observing the lesson of Zelensky, I will know that if I'm ever invited to the White House, I better have a top level, top of the line, tailored suit, ready to put on and smile, grip and grin, and have
Okay, what I
handshakes.
saw happened in the last 10 days. Let's provide summary. What's happened is that it was a 10 days past on August 8th. There was supposed to be sanctions and some other remedies, whatever Trump would find fit. Instead, his friend, the real estate developer, Steve Witkoff, without any diplomatic background, without any knowledge of history, geography, oblasts, and so on, but that's a different story. He's coming to Putin, he's coming back. All of a sudden, there are no actions, no tariffs, nothing at all. Furthermore, he invites Putin on August 15th to Alaska. Here is the red carpet, a war criminal. Even if U.S. is not a signatory to the Hague Tribunal, they have to at least respect that and organize meeting maybe in Qatar or some Saudi Arabia and some other countries that Trump actually likes a lot. And in the meantime, he would cut a couple of new real estate deals while being there. So I'm surprised he didn't use this opportunity. But after what they talked to Alaska, it's a mystery, except that they didn't invite Putin to state dinner. They didn't send him properly to his plane, but actually they gave him a certain window of 30 minutes that they had to just go away. And now this meeting with European leaders and, of course, Zelensky yesterday, where there was nothing of substance except a good one, which is $100 billion worth of weapons to be bought and $50 billion worth of Ukraine drones program. But something else happened, not very positive, is that now Trump provided Putin with another several months of arranging a bilateral meeting, trilateral meeting. The guarantee, what kind of guarantee? Who will provide guarantee? Under what pretense? Putin is against NATO countries to being present on Ukrainian soil, so they have to. So we are talking about 6 to 12 months more negotiations about all these issues with no ceasefire, no sanctions against Russia or countries which are buying their products. So overall, my perception is more negative than positive, unfortunately, of all these meetings and all that stuff. Trump continues to cover Putin or on extermination of Ukrainians. That's big picture, okay? Well, I'd like to thank you very much for today's program, and I wish that Ukraine will take initiative on the front line, forget about all these distractions with Alaska and Washington and whatever else. Just forget about it. Don't spend your time and energy. It's nothing. It's a cover for Putin to continue the war. And the only entity that could prevent that war from being successful for Putin and defend Ukraine is Ukrainian army. There's nothing more. You cannot think about, oh, maybe Germans will have, or maybe these people will have. Or that. No. It's Ukrainian army. So right now, if they can provide some kind of a very strong brigade or two to, in fact, attack Russians.
That would be the optimal move. If they can, say, destroy as we've talked about, destroy the Kerch Bridge first, isolate the Russians, prevent them from reinforcing or supplying, and then using whatever strategic reserve they've been able to assemble, attack and force the Russian occupiers of Crimea to surrender because they will not be able to effectively defend
Unfortunately.
themselves. So on that we're in agreement, but yeah, it remains a matter of speculation as to will the Ukrainian army military be able to, in the coming months or weeks, hopefully, be able to execute that kind of decisive counterattack. That is the big question.
Do you know that in the last 2.5 years, Russians were able to grab only 1% of Ukrainian territory in 2.5 years?
And it cost them how many million? How many? Over $1 million to get.
For sure. So it will take Russia with this level of attack 250 years to conquer Ukraine. I mean,
they'll run out of people long before that. And this, matter of fact, a number of Western observers have been noting that the Russian economy is approaching such a state of distortion that they may not be able to sustain their offensive operations beyond the end of this year.
Exactly. That's why some of the observers, they're saying that the war will be over by the end of this year. The only thing there don't explain why, because Russia will not be able to continue its fight.
Exactly.
Their economy will just deteriorate to such a degree, even without this.
Right. They can't. Yeah. And their logistical system, which is both corrupt as well as incompetent, and lacking the means to really supply an offensive operation. So, donkeys aren't going to do it. Donkeys and carts and everything else are not going to do it. They don't have any more Ford trucks. They've already used those up.
They don't have them, and they will not have them. That's for sure. As I've argued before, the so-called correlation of forces that the Soviets used to like to talk about during the Cold War, the correlation of forces is still, in my opinion, steadily moving in favor of Ukraine, not Russia. Yes, absolutely correct. Ivan, any thoughts about possible successful attack of Ukraine against Russia?
I don't know where it can be. Actually, I watched a nice interview with one of the Ukrainian field commanders of the brigades which committed Kursk operation 1 year ago. And it was a really interesting and practical one, and it was actually shooted 1 year ago, but Ukrainian military command allowed it only to be published just now in order maybe not to cover some information for the Russians. And what he mentioned that operation was carried out in a complete secret, like several days before the start of the operation at night, without any heavy equipment. All the equipment that arrived later, and they were traveling at night in order for locals not to see them and not to post that information somewhere in social networks. So just to say someone that there are some soldiers there and their number is increasing, and the team, actually all the troops, they've discovered the order of what they should do, like in 24 hours before the start of the operation. And it shows actually that Ukraine can arrange such operations in complete secrecy and with the proper preparation, which is actually most important in such operations. So hopefully, I don't know what Ukraine is preparing. In his recent interview, Ukrainian Chief Command General Syrsky said that Ukraine is planning offensive operation. It was like 2 days ago when he gave that interview, and I hope that we'll see this operation, that operation this year. So we can just have to be patient and wait for it, and hopefully it will be prepared in a complete secrecy, like the Kharkiv offensive operation, like the Kursk operation, and it will show us the
Well,
great
I
results.
fully agree with, and I share your hope that Ukraine selects a decisive enough operation and is able to execute it at the right time that catches the Russians completely off balance, and that will be the way, in my opinion, contrary to the opinion of most Western analysts, that will be the way that Ukraine finally brings this war to a conclusion that is acceptable to Ukraine, really to everyone else's idea of what a peace should look like.
Wonderful. I would like to thank both of you for this program. And we are going to meet on Friday, same place, same time, with probably a lot of new information about what's going on. And in the meantime, Slava Ukraini, glory to you.
God bless America. Yeah, let's not forget Canada. Okay, God can bless Canada.
And other countries.
Oh yeah, well, now Russia,
Right.
that would be pushing it. Okay. Do not tempt God.